This video I'm creating is on how to create a tint and a shade of a color and also how to mix your grays. So before we get into exactly what we're doing today, you guys will need the following colors, I guess, of your acrylic paint that are in your art kit. You will need your white, your black, and one of your three primary colors. Okay, so for this you can either use red or yellow or blue. I always like to demonstrate in red. That's like a personal preference. So I have my paint palette set up, which I'll talk about in a second. So you will need your plastic paint palette. You will need a cup of water, brush, paper towel for blotting off excess water, a piece of paper, and like I had mentioned in a previous video, find something really small to trace around. You will need a pencil as well. I'm just using this little pencil sharpener. You can use anything that's roughly this size that can give you a really quick shape just to put on your paper that you can then fill in with different colors that you're mixing, okay? So I have my paper set up the following way. Let's talk about this first. And lighting's not super good, sorry guys. But I have roughly 5 little spaces that I can fill in with different grays. And part of the reason why we're mixing these today is a lot of your animals that you have created for your paper mache may have some type of gray in it that you most likely will have to mix yourself because you're given a limited color palette. Now the other part down here is, so I have like 5 boxes or 5 spaces for different grays I will mix. Then I have 3 spaces down here set up the following. I have one here on the left that's labeled Tint, T-I-N-T. One that's just labeled a color of your choice. Again, this could be red, yellow, or blue. And then the box on the right is labeled Shade, okay, which we'll talk about in a moment. So this is how my paper is set up. So I encourage you to do the same. And then your paint palette should be set up like this. Now, keep in mind, this is just an exercise. This is just practice. So we want to keep the paint that's in these craters to a minimum. All right, so I squeezed out maybe, I don't know, nickel size amounts. Anything more than this is kind of going to be a little bit wasteful, just FYI. So the smaller the globs you can make, I think the better for this particular exercise, so we can conserve our acrylic paint for our actual project. So up here on the top of the crater, I have one white, one black. We will convert this white into all of our different gray tones that we will create. Then I have my bottom part of my palette set up as follows. So I have another white, another black, and this is where you put the color of your choice. So I chose red. Again, you could choose yellow or blue for this particular exercise. Now, just a real quick thing before we get started. This is acrylic paint. This means that it is permanent, all right? So what that means for you all, it will wash off your hands, obviously. If it gets on your clothes or your workspace, or if it dries in your paintbrush bristles, it will basically bind there forever and ever, and it's difficult to nearly impossible to get out. So trust me on that one. So yeah, washing up paintbrushes and paint palettes at the end with soap and water, insanely important. Okay, so at this point in time, let's talk about what it is we're doing. So for these top sections right here, what we're going to do is create a series of grays. Now, most students know that in order to mix a gray color, gray paint, you are mixing black and white together, correct? All right. So that's a pretty well-known fact, but I'm going to share with you how you can control the gray tone that you mix. If you want it lighter, I'm going to share with you how to convert like a light gray to a darker gradually. If you were to do this the opposite way, so for example, the way I'm going to show you today is to add little tiny smidgens. So a smidgen, believe it or not, is a very small amount of this black to this white, gradually mix, 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 and it will deepen this tone of your color gradually because you're adding small amounts of black to the white. Now, if you were to do it the opposite way, okay, and start with black as your base and add the white in, it would take you probably 3, if not 4 times the amount of paint to achieve the color that you're creating, unless it's a very, 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 very dark tone of gray, okay? It only takes a little bit of black to convert this into a gray. It takes so much more white to lighten the dark color that's in this paint palette. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I am going to use a small paintbrush, Use the smallest paintbrush that you have for this, and then when you apply it, you can switch paintbrushes if you so choose. So the goal here is to make this box your lightest gray. This box will be your darkest gray, okay? And what I'm gonna do is take the smallest smidgen of black, okay, so something that looks like this on my brush, and mix it thoroughly in my paint palette right here. Okay, so let's say you're trying to do a really light gray for your animal. This would be it. And this is a barely, you can apply it right here, barely a difference between the white and the gray I have mixed. Okay, so super duper light gray. All right, mix, 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 blot, blot, blot. And I'm gonna go back in for another smidgen or so. Okay, so I can make this one a little bit bigger this time. Maybe something like that, and mix it in thoroughly. We don't want any of the swirly awesomeness of this color to be in this critter. We do want to mix it as thoroughly as possible. All right, so next gray. So this one's a really nice one right here. So again, a little bit darker. To have control over where your paint goes, you're going to want to hold your paintbrush in the land where metal meets wood. Okay, rinse, 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 blot, blot, blot. I'm going to go for another smidgen. Let's say you want to make this one a little bit darker. So you're like, okay, I added a smidgen. Not exactly what I'm going for. It's too similar. Rinse, blot, go back for another smidgen. No shame in that. But doing it this way allows you as the artist to control the color that you are mixing. Sorry, I'm breaking my own rule. Adding a little bit more. All right, this is kind of a nice medium range gray. Let me get it mixed real quick and then we'll apply it. Yeah, that's kind of a cool gray. I like that one. All right, so I'm gonna apply that right here. So again, this is kind of my medium range gray. My craftsmanship's not great this morning. Just trying to get this on the page here. Yeah, okay, so really light gray. We're starting to get darker now. I'm gonna go back in, rinse, blot for another smidgen. See how dark this turns. I may go back in for another one just to deepen it past what I have already. And again, if it looks swirly in your crater here, please mix it thoroughly because you're going to need all this paint by the end. In fact, I'm running out right now as we speak. I'm going to add a little bit more just to make it a little bit darker. All right, that's actually looking really good. I'm gonna apply that, and then my last one that I'm creating is gonna be all in. Here we go. Nice. All right, last one all in. Gonna scoop up the rest, the remaining glob. Actually, I'm gonna grab all this, look at that. Okay, so that last one should be fairly dark. So I'm gonna make it, there we go. Mix it as thoroughly as I can. I'm gonna add the rest of this. There we go. All right, and at this point, we are good to go. Nice. Okay, so that gives you an idea of how to create a bunch of different grays if you need them for the animal that you are creating. Okay, so all that I was able to achieve with just black and white. Now, like I mentioned, you saw me start with a lighter color as the base, gradually add the darker color in. It allows you as the artist to control the color you're mixing. If you were to do it the opposite way, you would waste so much white trying to turn the black a little bit lighter, okay? Now for our last one, what we're going to do is talk about tints and shades of a color, okay? So in the previous video I created for you guys, we talked about mixing different colors, like things like orange and violet and green and all of those tertiary colors like yellow, orange, etc. So those are things that you guys are a little bit familiar with. So what happens if you want to create a lighter version or a darker version of each of those colors, okay? If you are creating a lighter version, you're going to mix that color with white. If you want to create a darker version, you're going to mix that color with black. Okay, so anytime you're making a color lighter, it's a tint of a color. So for example, if you, when I do this right here, you're going to watch me in just a second. When I add the red to this white here, when I add red and white together, I'm going to get a tint of red, which just happens to be the color pink. And momentarily, when I make this color darker by adding black to it to make it darker, I'm creating a shade of a color. So I'm making it darker, and when I add the black to the red, I'm gonna get sort of a maroonish color, okay? So again, we're always starting with the lightest color as the base and adding the darker one in. So for this, because I'm only doing one tint of a color, I'm just kind of gonna grab a little bit more than I ordinarily would, and I'm gonna mix it in here. And you can totally see that the tint of the color that I've created is sort of like this cotton candy pink. Okay, let's say I wanted it to be like a slightly deeper version of pink, which I may want to go for like more of a watermelon type color today. Grab another kind of little smidgen here, mix it in. And I'll go back in for, I think I'm going to make it a little bit darker. Okay, so it allows you to gradually control this color. This is kind of looking cool. I like this. Just by adding small amounts to the lighter colors, the base. So I'm going to apply that here. So this is my pink, my tint of red. Love it. Holding my paintbrush in the land where metal meets wood just to craft a little bit better. And now what I want to do is I want to create a shade of red. Okay, so before I do that, I'm going to plug in my red just so you can see the difference. And again, I'm using red. You could use yellow or blue. So this is my pure color. This is my red. It's what it looks like. And then in just a moment, I'm going to convert this red into a shade by adding small amounts of black to the red. Okay, now this will turn, like I said before, it'll turn to be like a maroonish color or so, and that will be my shade of red. Okay, so you can see the difference between lighter version, we have the color, and now what I'm gonna do, I'm not gonna add the red to this black, because what's going to happen here is it's going to be black for a very, very long time, because that black is so dark. So I would have to put 5 times the amount of red, if not more, in here to turn it lighter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this red to a shade by adding smidgens of black. Okay, so we're always using the lighter color as the base and adding the darker one in. You can start to see this turn. I'm going to grab a little bit more. Here we go. All right, and this is starting to look like a maroonish color. I call it vampire blood. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and apply that to this last part. Now for that, you saw me grab a huge glob of that black to mix in with the red. I only did that just because I knew I wanted it to be darker for you all. If you add small smidgens of it, you can control it gradually and conserve your paint at the same time. Brilliant. All right, so this completes your second exercise here with creating different grays. from light to dark, starting with white as the base, adding small amounts of black in gradually, and then creating a tint, which is a lighter version of a color or a shade darker version of a color. Please do not forget when you are done to wash out your paintbrushes with soap and water. Really wash out your paint palette, because again, if the acrylic paint dries in there, sad day for you. It basically binds to all your stuff.